Do you have a right to protest in America? I know you probably think that you do, and don't rush to the First Amendment of the Constitution. I know it says that you have a right to organize and you have a right to protest and all that. But in reality, it's really gonna come down to what state you're in, because thanks to inaction from the Supreme Court, in several states where tens of millions of people live, you no longer have that guaranteed right anymore. And so we're gonna turn to yesterday. Okay, the Supreme Court declined to hear Mckesson versus Doe. That decision, not to hear this case, leaves in place a lower court decision that effectively eliminated the right to organize a mass protest in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. Louisiana and Mississippi, perfectly fine states. Texas is a big state. This is a big thing. Many big protests have been held in Texas, but maybe not going forward. And so what does this mean? Well, DeRay Mckesson helped organize the Baton Rouge protests. This is years and years ago that followed following a fatal police shooting of Alton Sterling. You might remember that case. During that protest, a completely unknown individual threw a rock or something at a police officer. We don't know who threw the rock, but everybody knows that it was not Mckesson. He is not the person who did it. And the Supreme Court held in NAACP versus Claiborne Hardware that protest leaders cannot be held liable for the violent actions of a protest participant. So the organizer of the protest did not throw this rock, which regrettably and tragically did really seriously harm the police officer. The officer was struck and allegedly had injuries to his teeth, jaw, brain, and head. Very serious injury. But again, he did not throw, Mckesson, the organizer, did not throw it. The Supreme Court has already set the precedent that you cannot be held responsible for illegal or violent acts that are not connected to you in a protest that you organize.
Hey, I'm glad you're here. Listen, in order for the damage report to keep on going, we need viewers like you to become a member on YouTube. Can you click the join button on YouTube today? Thank you.
And by the way, this is not the only case where they've effectively done that. There's also a Counterman v. Colorado is another case that implies that unless there is a logical connection between what you have done and the violence that is connected to a protest that you have organized, you cannot be held responsible for it. Now, thanks to that lower court ruling, that now effectively doesn't function anymore. That's not the precedent anymore. Now, the Supreme Court could have been consistent and they could have overturned that appeals court ruling. They declined to do so. And I know what you're thinking, but isn't the Supreme Court supposed to agree with itself in the past? Not anymore. You can add this Roe v. Wade, I think was a great example of this. There have been other examples of that ever since the conservatives took over the Supreme Court. And now we have this too, which is precedent is meaningless. Now it's just whatever they want. They don't like those protests. They don't like you protesting cops or police brutality or anything like that. And so now they've effectively outlawed that, because if you can be held responsible for any act of violence or vandalism or trespassing or property destruction or whatever that happens at a protest that you organize, you cannot organize protests anymore without opening yourself up to massive criminal liability, fines of millions of dollars, perhaps a stay in prison. And I want you to think about this, because you may be thinking, okay, so you have like a BLM protest or something. Now, if one of the hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people that show up, that do something wrong, then you're gonna be potentially charged, so you can't do that. No, you're not thinking creatively enough. We have no idea who threw the rock. We have no idea if it was even an actual protester, someone who actually agrees with Mckesson. Maybe it was, but in the future, does it have to be? Let's say you were to organize a protest over another act of police brutality, or I don't know, maybe it's in Texas. Let's come up with something ridiculous, like there's a tragic mass shooting and hundreds of cops just sort of like sit around watching it happen and don't intervene. And let's say you want to protest the cops over that. So you organize, and you know what? Because of this decision by the Supreme Court, you talk to everyone super closely and you say you cannot do anything that even gets near to breaking the law. And then a neo-Nazi shows up and throws a rock at a cop, or a KKK member, or a Proud Boy, or a Boogaloo Boy. Doesn't matter. Nothing about what the appeals court said or the fact that the Supreme Court declined to pick it up says that they have to be ideologically affiliated with you. They don't have to say you have to have some sort of philosophical affinity. It just happened at a protest. Which, by the way, means in theory, and I am not advocating for this, if there's a right-wing protest, some crazy commie could show up, throw a Molotov cocktail at a cop car, and that's on the right-wingers now, I guess. They're the ones that organized it. They should have been more careful. What did they think? They had a First Amendment right? No, but seriously, like, and don't do that. Do not do that. Do not do that. Do not do that. I'm gonna be super clear in a way that no right winger ever will. But this is the chaos that the Supreme Court has now opened us up to. And we will have to see. It's not impossible that they could, in a separate case or a similar case, once again reaffirm the multiple Supreme Court decisions that have already said that you cannot be held liable for this, because if that is so, then that First Amendment right does not exist. They can do that. Will they do that? Stay tuned to find out what rights you actually have. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.